The paleo diet is a seductive concept. It envisions a prehistoric utopia where robust men venture out in the morning to hunt protein-rich ungulates like cattle, horses, cows, and return home in the evening with as much meat as they could carry. While the men were away, the women and children gathered fruits, nuts, seeds, and root vegetables. They were all strong, healthy, and well-fed. But like so many seductive stories, this vision of the Paleolithic is mostly a fantasy. A new study combines what we've learned from contemporary hunter-gatherer populations with new discoveries about ancient humans to give us a more nuanced view of what our ancestral diet really looks like. My name is Jeremy Colon, and this is The Dark Side of Fitness, Episode 8. A quick background. The Paleolithic began more than 3 million years ago when human ancestors began using simple stone tools. The diet, named after that era, is based on a relatively tiny slice of its vast history, a time when recognizably modern humans lived in cohesive social groups and enjoyed a vast array of animal and plant foods. Even with the narrow focus, the diet's proponent gets some fundamentals wrong. They assumed meat provided the majority of calories to most people, most of the time. They assumed humans had a steady supply of large animals to hunt, and that hunting was successful more often than not. They assumed our pre-agriculture ancestors ate a low-carb diet. How the study worked. The authors, Herman Pontzer, PhD, and Brian Wood, PhD, are anthropologists who spent years studying the Hadza, a contemporary hunter-gatherer group in northern Tanzania. They combined their research with studies of more than a dozen hunter-gatherer populations in Africa, Australia, and South America. Finally, they addressed some of the claims made by paleo diet proponents about nutrition and the evolution of human biology. What the study found: meat versus plants. Average meat consumption ranges from 5 to 90% of total calories across contemporary hunter-gatherer populations, with seasonal and individual variations within each population. Among the Hadza, for example, plants provided at as little as 20% of calories and as much as 80% at different times of the year. In general, populations in colder or drier regions eat a higher proportion of meat and fish, while those in warmer, wetter climates eat more plants. Challenges of hunting versus gathering. For hunter-gatherers, ancient or contemporary, survival requires a risk-reward calculation. Think of it in terms of investing strategies. Hunting is like day trading. On any given day, you take huge risks to your health and safety and expend a small fortune in time and energy to find animals that have evolved to be difficult to catch. Predators take the weak and slow out of the gene pool, leaving the strongest and fastest to survive long enough to reproduce. If you succeed, you come home with enough energy and protein-rich food to feed you and your family for days. But if you fail, you have nothing to show for your effort except an empty stomach and a hungry family. On the other hand, gathering is like investing in low-interest government bonds. Plants, unlike animals, are easy to find and consume because they can't run away. In the wild, carnivore species travel about 4 times farther than herbivores to find their food each day. But the plants you find typically have low yields in terms of calories, so you have to gather, prepare, and eat a lot more of them to get enough food to survive. Based on all of this, you can see what hunter-gatherers eat on any given day. Depends. Proportion of carbohydrates. Although there's no such thing as an average hunter-gatherer population, groups in warm climates typically get about 40 to 60% of total calories from plants and 40 to 60% from animal foods. But within each group, there are wide variations from one season to the next. These 3 months represent the extremes of the Hadza diet. The macronutrients are shown as the grams per day. Total intake averages about 2,240 calories per day. You can also look at the graph above. Here's why those numbers fluctuate so much. Meat provides 2/3 of their daily energy in September. Honey provides 56% of their calories in February. In July, they get 57% of their energy from berries, which explains where all that fiber comes from. Here are some coaching takeaways. Number 1, even when game is plentiful, hunters still gather. Contemporary hunter-gatherer populations never go all in on one source of nutrition. No matter how much meat they have, plants are always on the menu. When they do eat plants, they go for high-energy fruits like berries and root vegetables like tubers. But they don't eat salads. Leafy greens are less than 1% of contemporary hunter-gatherer diets. As you saw in the previous example, they get plenty of fiber through fibrous vegetables. Number 2, the paleo diet doesn't actually resemble what our human ancestors ate. Domesticated plants are typically lower in protein, fiber, and micronutrients than the original versions of the same plants, the ones humans gathered and consumed in the wild. They're also less satiating. Domesticated animals have about 50% more fat, including intramuscular fat, than wild game animals. They also have a higher ratio of saturated to polyunsaturated fatty acids. Number 3, for lifelong health, we need to be as adaptable as our ancestors. One thing paleo diet advocates get right: contemporary hunter-gatherer populations don't suffer from diseases of civilization, quote unquote, obesity, heart rate, diabetes, cancer. That's true of the groups that eat a high proportion of animal foods, a high proportion of plants, and everything in between. It's true of groups that live in extremely warm or extremely cold parts of the world. And it's true of groups like the Hadza, whose macronutrient ratios change dramatically from month to month. Over hundreds of generations, they learn to make the best of what their environment provides and to do without what it denies them. Let's clear up 3 paleo misconceptions. Number 1, there was never a single paleo or ancestral diet. We don't know exactly what ancient people ate, but it's safe to assume their diets were varied as those of contemporary hunter-gatherer groups. For one thing, wherever humans migrated, from Africa to Eurasia to the Americas, the largest mammals soon disappeared. There's still some debate about the role of our ancestors had in their extinction. What we do know is that humans once coexisted with giant ground sloths, woolly rhinos, cave bears, and mammoths. Humans survived, the others didn't. The only constant in our evolutionary history is change. We've always had to adapt to new environments and new sources of nutrition. As paleoanthropologist Peter Ungar wrote in the Scientific American, food choice is as much about what is available to be eaten as it is about what a species evolved to eat. Because our world was ever changing, so too was the diet of our ancestors. Number 2, humans are still evolving. Speaking of evolution, one of the oddest conceits of the paleo diet is that humans haven't had time to adapt to grains, legumes, beans, peas, lentils, or even dairy. About 40% of us can digest dairy throughout life, including a majority of people of European descent. The mutation, called lactase persistence, is thought to have originated about 8,000 years ago. In Africa, 3 distinct mutations have developed in response to dairy consumption. As for the other 2 foods, number 3, grain and legumes aren't new to the human diet. There's a lot of evidence that ancient humans gathered, processed, and consumed wild grains and legumes long before the rise of agriculture. Archaeologists have found grain residue on Paleolithic tools across the globe. Our ancestors started grinding grains into flour at least 30,000 years ago. Even Neanderthals, our evolutionary cousins, cooked enough wild grains to leave some trapped on their teeth, which reminds us of something that isn't paleo, dental floss, but it's hard to imagine living without it. Thank you for getting through this video. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share with anybody that could benefit from this information. So my final thoughts on this, it's like anything else, right? It's kind of one of those say what you mean, do what you say kind of thing, or I may be reversing it, but it's okay. Long story short, a lot of these diets, right, especially extreme diets or any diet in general, the intention of it is great, but the execution of it is questionable in the sense that no one should be doing extreme things to get to a certain goal or to a certain point. You don't have to eat raw materials or meats or whatever the case is to, achieve a certain level of health and fitness. Hype honestly sells with these diets. So, adhere and tread lightly in the sense that if you don't see yourself doing a certain thing, don't force yourself to do it. There's so many other ways to achieve what you want, to get where you want to be, and it can go at the flow that you want it to be. And that's all it is. At the end of the day, lifestyle is at your pace when it matters most to you, and what you can do, what can you do to achieve it in the most efficient and sustainable way. So all in all, follow a routine that works best for you. Before you try anything, always do your research, always consult a health professional in any way or sense, and make the decision that makes the most sense for you. So again, thank you again for watching this video. Have a great rest of your day and take care.